My name is Elena Moore, and for most of my life, that's how my family introduced me behind closed doors. Not as the oldest daughter, not as the one who helped grandma through chemo, or the one who took night shifts to pay for her own tuition. No, just drama. Just the one who cried too much, asked too many questions, and didn't know when to shut up at family dinners. It's almost funny now, because the same people who called me too sensitive, too emotional, and too much had no idea they were handing me their entire future piece by piece. Let me take you back. A year ago, I was barely holding myself together. I had just gotten out of a toxic relationship, was juggling a full-time job, and still showing up for every hospital visit for my father, even when no one told me the schedule. I found out through a Facebook post that he'd been admitted. A post. That's how far removed they'd pushed me. You see, my younger sister Mia was the golden child, always perfect, always diplomatic. And my brother, Aaron, the charming one. He could crash his car into a mailbox, and they'd still blame the mailbox. I, on the other hand, was always the bad mood, the burden, the one who brings the energy down. So when I started noticing how exhausted Mom looked, how confused Dad seemed during conversations, I said something. Of course I did. I asked questions about their medications, their bills, their long-term care plan. I asked if someone had been helping with their finances because things didn't add up. My dad would ask about the same appointment 4 times in one day. And Mom would brush it off like he just needed more sleep. They didn't thank me for my concern. They attacked me for it. She's always making things worse, Mia snapped in front of everyone during a family lunch. She's just drama. Aaron chimed in too. This is why nobody tells you anything, Elena. You overreact. So I left early that day. I walked out, tears stinging, but not falling. I decided I'd do what I always did, quietly handle things myself. I started keeping a journal of Dad's symptoms, and I took Mom's insurance info and called around to understand what they qualified for. I even hired a geriatric care consultant out of my own pocket, and slowly I began to realize this wasn't just about aging. This was about neglect, possibly even exploitation. Mom had signed a few things she didn't remember signing, and Dad had no idea that Aaron had been using his debit card to pay for car repairs and luxury sneakers. The deeper I looked, the darker it got. Still, I said nothing to them, because they'd already made up their minds about me. But I wasn't going to let them fail our parents. So I got legal advice. I filed for temporary custody and financial oversight, power of attorney. The process wasn't easy. It involved hearings, evaluations, social workers, and at every step, my siblings mocked me behind my back. She thinks she's some kind of savior, I overheard Mia say once. She just wants attention, Aaron scoffed. But then came the court date. They all showed up, smirking, smug, arms folded like they were watching me audition for a part I'd never get. But they didn't know what I had in my file. They didn't know what I was about to reveal. And when the judge began reading the findings, well, that's when the room began to shift. The courtroom felt cold, not from the temperature, but from the way my family stared at me like I didn't belong there, like I was wasting everyone's time. Mia wore a silk blouse and brought her lawyer boyfriend, as if she thought appearances alone would win her credibility. Aaron sat slouched in the back with sunglasses perched on his head like he was at a pool party, not a guardianship hearing. And Mom? She looked tired, her lipstick too bright, her hair too perfect. It felt like she was trying to cover something, maybe guilt, maybe denial. I sat alone at my table, my hands clutching the folder I had spent 6 months building. Inside were receipts, documents, screenshots, medical assessments, and care records. I had charted every mistake, every forgotten medication, every bill paid late or not at all. I even had the names of the aides that Aaron had verbally harassed, and unpaid invoices for caregivers Mia had promised to call but never did. When the judge, a stern woman named Judge Callahan, walked in, the room settled into a tense silence. She adjusted her glasses and began reading the case details, starting with the petition I had filed, requesting medical custody of my father and power of attorney over both my parents' financial affairs due to observed cognitive decline and suspected mishandling of funds. I felt my heart hammering as she spoke. Then she looked up. Ms. Moore, do you have evidence to support this petition? I stood up, steadying myself. Yes, Your Honor, I do. I handed the file to the bailiff and returned to my seat. My palms were damp, my breathing shallow. As the judge flipped through the pages, the smugness slowly faded from Mia's face. Aaron leaned forward, clearly confused. I didn't need to look at them. I could feel the shift. Judge Callahan read in silence for a long time. When she finally looked back up, her voice was measured but firm. This is extensive documentation, very thorough. I'm seeing unpaid utility bills, unmonitored prescriptions, and a pattern of financial withdrawals made without clarity or consent. Are your parents aware of your petition, Ms. Moore? I nodded. My mother refused to acknowledge the severity of what's happening. My father, he can't make consistent decisions anymore. His neurologist has documented early-stage dementia. The notes are in there too. My siblings stayed quiet. For once. Then Mia blurted out, "She's just doing this to take control. She always has to be the hero." Judge Callahan didn't even flinch. "Ms. Bennett, this is not about personal narratives. It's about legal responsibility and the well-being of two elderly individuals who may not be receiving proper care." And then, she turned the floor to the court-appointed geriatric consultant I had hired and paid for myself. The consultant, a calm, middle-aged woman with soft curls and a stack of her own notes, stood up and addressed the court. In my evaluation, I found that Mr. Moore was left unsupervised for long stretches. His cognitive tests show significant decline. He has missed medication doses, and he appears confused about his finances. Mrs. Moore shows signs of being overwhelmed and unaware of the severity of her husband's condition. Ms. Elena Moore is the only one who has followed up with care services, attended evaluations, and shown consistent advocacy for both of them. That was when Aaron mumbled, "This is a setup." But even his voice lacked conviction now. It was Judge Callahan's next words that stunned them. "In light of the evidence and the recommendation of the court-appointed evaluator, I am granting temporary guardianship of Mr. Moore to Ms. Elena Moore. Additionally, I am awarding her financial power of attorney for both parents until further review." The silence that followed was heavy, crushing. Mia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Aaron looked like he'd just been slapped. And I just sat there, silent, calm. It wasn't about revenge, it was about doing what was right. But watching their expressions collapse in real time, that was the first time in years I felt seen. We stepped out of the courtroom into a hallway that felt far too bright. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider in my own family. I felt like someone who had just told the truth and been believed. But of course, the moment the judge's words stopped echoing, the whispering began. Mia caught up with me first. Her heels clicked fast behind me. "You ambushed us," she hissed. "You made us look like monsters." I turned around slowly. "I didn't make you look like anything. You just didn't expect someone to finally hold up a mirror." Aaron stayed back, hands in his pockets, eyes avoiding mine. Coward. He could run his mouth when there were no consequences, but now? He looked like a child caught red-handed. That same debit card I found transactions on? It was now part of an official record. A report had already been filed. What really stunned me, though, was Mom. She walked out of the building between them, not saying a word. Her face was unreadable, not anger, not sadness, just empty. And for some reason, that hurt more than if she'd screamed at me. Later that night, I sat on the couch at my apartment, the file still on my coffee table, like a war medal I didn't want to look at. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Mia. "You always wanted to be in control. Congrats. You finally won." Won. Is that what they thought this was? They had no idea what I had lost to get here. The sleepless nights, the anxiety attacks, the grief of watching my father fade before my eyes while everyone else played pretend. I wasn't power-hungry. I was desperate. Desperate to protect the people who raised me, even if they didn't think I deserved to be part of the family anymore. The next few weeks were a blur of doctor's appointments, medication charts, and home evaluations. I moved back into the House I grew up in, temporarily, because my father needed constant supervision now. My mother resisted at first. She wouldn't let me rearrange the pill organizer. She wouldn't let me install the safety rails in the bathroom. She wouldn't even let me hire help. She said, "This is still my home." I answered gently, "And I'm not here to take it from you. I'm here so you don't lose it." That night, I found her sitting alone in the dark at the kitchen table. She looked smaller somehow, like her pride was the only thing keeping her upright, and now it had nowhere left to stand. "I don't know when things got this bad," she whispered, not looking at me. "I just didn't want anyone to think I was failing." That broke me, because I'd spent years being told I was the failure, when really we were all just trying to survive in our own quiet ways. Hers was denial, mine was fighting, and somewhere in between, we forgot we were on the same side. I placed a cup of tea in front of her and sat down. "You don't have to pretend anymore, Mom. I've got it now." And for once, she didn't pull away. Meanwhile, Aaron was nowhere to be found. Rumor was he'd moved in with a friend after I flagged his spending. Mia posted something passive-aggressive on Facebook about people who thrive on chaos and deleted me the next day. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't always bring people closer. Sometimes it burns the bridge to ash. But what they didn't realize yet was that I wasn't just in charge of Dad's health. The next storm was coming, and I held the keys to all of it. Once the court order settled and the legal dust began to clear, the real responsibilities started to pile up. I had access now to everything they thought I'd never touch. Bank accounts, medical files, even the estate planning documents that had been buried for years in my father's locked filing cabinet. And what I found inside that cabinet changed everything. The will hadn't been updated in over a decade. It was practically a fossil. Back when Dad still had full clarity, he'd written it to split everything equally between the three of us, Mia, Aaron, and me. But nothing about the document reflected the last 10 years. Not my parents' deteriorating health. Not the fact that Aaron had drained tens of thousands through helping Dad with errands. Not that Mia had added her name to one of Mom's credit cards to pay for vacations while claiming she was managing household expenses. I sat there, the will in one hand and the newest bank statements in the other, my stomach turning. If they had kept me in the loop, if they had listened to my warnings years ago, we could have protected what was left, but now I had to play cleanup crew to a collapsing legacy. The attorney I hired for my parents' estate was clear. You have the authority now to help restructure their assets, pay off what debts you can, and protect them from any more misuse. But you'll need to revisit the will. Either you convince your parents to revise it or prepare for a legal storm when they pass. The word storm stayed with me, because I could already feel the thunder brewing. The first to catch wind of the changes was Mia. She called me one morning after discovering her name had been removed from access to Mom's personal account. "This is petty, Elena," she snapped. She asked me to order things for her. She also didn't remember doing it, I said flatly, which is exactly why I'm managing it now. Aaron texted the next day. "Bro, so now you're just freezing everyone out? Real mature." I didn't reply, because the truth was, I was done defending myself. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't even the hero. I was just the last one standing when the rest of them walked away from responsibility. At the next family meeting with the estate attorney, I brought everyone together at the house. It was surreal seeing them all seated at the old dining table. Again, Mia, arms folded like a statue, Aaron pretending he wasn't anxious, Mom quiet beside me, holding a folder I had helped her organize. She still had moments of confusion, but she trusted me now. That alone was worth every sleepless night. "Before we go further," I began, "I need to be clear. There are debts. There are unpaid taxes. There is damage that's been done. And if we want to preserve anything, we need to act like a family, not like three strangers who only show up when there's money involved." Mia rolled her eyes. "So what? Now you're the martyr?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm the legal guardian and the power of attorney. You can call me whatever you want, but I'm also the only one trying to fix what's broken." "The coin," Lawyer didn't even flinch. She nodded at me and began laying out the updated asset protection plan. She mentioned guardianship, transfer of medical decision-making, financial restructuring. She mentioned the will needing revision to reflect who was actually contributing to the care of the estate. I watched the realization land in Mia's eyes, in Aaron's. They had assumed this was temporary, that I'd cave, that I'd get overwhelmed, and give it back to them. But I wasn't going anywhere. After the meeting, while the others filtered out, my mother stayed seated. She looked around at the house like she was seeing it for the first time. "I didn't think it would be you," she said softly. "Neither did I whispered. But sometimes, when the others abandon ship, the drama queen is the only one left willing to swim through the wreckage. The truth is, winning doesn't always feel like winning." In the weeks after the legal shift, the loneliness set in. I had the authority, the power, the signatures, but I also had the burden. I was the one juggling appointments with neurologists, calls with estate planners, checking the stair railing twice before bed. The responsibility was crushing, and the silence from my siblings was louder than ever. Mia stopped coming around altogether. She texted once, saying she was taking space. Aaron tried to keep things casual, sending me YouTube links and memes like we were teenagers again. But every time I asked him to come help with Dad's physical therapy or take Mom to the pharmacy, he ghosted me. It was a strange type of grief, not over death, but over the idea of family as I'd always wanted it to be. I didn't need a trophy for doing the right thing, but part of me had hoped they'd at least say, "Thanks, you." Instead, all I got was distance. One night, I found Dad wandering the hallway at 2 a.m., looking for a room that no longer existed. His old study had been turned into storage years ago. He looked at me with a mixture of panic and confusion I'll never forget. "Where's my desk?" he asked. My throat tightened. "It's okay, Dad. Come back to bed." He looked around the house like it was a stranger's. I guided him gently to the couch, and he fell asleep, curled into himself like a boy. I stayed up, staring at the ceiling, wondering why doing the right thing always felt like losing pieces of yourself. The next day, I visited the care center with Mom to discuss options for part-time support. The director pulled me aside after the meeting. "I just want to say," she said, "we rarely see adult children step up like this, especially when there's pushback from the family. You're doing more than most." It caught me off guard. I think it was the first kind word I'd heard in weeks. But I didn't do it for praise. I did it because someone had to. Still, I couldn't shake the ache in my chest, especially when I saw old photos of us. Holidays, laughter, togetherness, that now felt like fiction. Had it always been so fragile? Or did truth just peel back the curtain no one wanted open? Then, one afternoon, as I was organizing my parents' legal paperwork, I got a notification. Mia had posted an open letter on social media. I clicked, my stomach dropping as I read. "Some people weaponize tragedy to control. Some pretend to care when really, they just want power. But real family shows up without needing a court order." There was no name, no direct tag, but everyone knew who it was about. And the comments? Full of sympathy. People who knew nothing of what I'd carried calling me cold, vindictive, attention-seeking. I closed the laptop. That was the final straw. Not because of what she said, but because I realized then I didn't need their validation. I didn't even want it anymore. I'd fought for our parents, not for applause, not to be liked. And if protecting them meant being the villain in Mia's carefully curated world, then fine. Let her paint me in whatever colors helped her sleep at night. Because I had work to do, real, human, exhausting, invisible work. The kind no post or comment could ever capture. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary, uneventful, until it wasn't. That morning, I had just gotten home from another appointment with Dad's neurologist. His condition had progressed, not rapidly, but steadily enough that the doctor suggested finalizing all end-of-life directives sooner rather than later. So I sat Mom down at the kitchen table, laid out the documents, and gently talked her through them. It was hard, watching her sign papers about life support, asset protection, hospice care, her own medical proxies. But she did it, quietly, bravely. When it was over, she exhaled a long, shaky breath and said, "I trust you." 3 words, simple, but it was everything I had needed to hear for years. That afternoon, we had another scheduled family meeting, this one requested by the estate attorney. We were finalizing the updated will and confirming the transfer of legal authority. Everyone showed up. Aaron was late, of course. Wearing a hoodie like this was a casual hangout. Mia wore all black, as if she were going to a funeral. Maybe she thought she was. The lawyer got straight to the point. Today, we're finalizing the legal updates for Mr. and Mrs. Moore's estate, medical directives, and power of attorney assignments. All of this has been reviewed, signed, and witnessed. We're simply confirming and entering it into the formal record. Mia shifted. Wait, what do you mean finalized? Nobody asked for my input. The attorney kept her tone even. As you know, your parents are within their rights to designate their legal representative. Given their current state and Elena's court-appointed guardianship, the legal authority rests with her. Aaron leaned back, arms crossed. So we get no say? The lawyer paused, then pulled out the signed papers. These documents grant Elena full and continued power of attorney, medical and financial. Additionally, the estate has been updated. Per the new will, she will remain executor. Certain properties have been restructured under her name to ensure long-term care funds are protected. You could hear a pin drop. Then Mia's face went pale. Wait, she's executor? She gets control of the properties? She's managing them, the lawyer clarified. Not for personal gain, but to ensure care expenses are sustained for both parents. It was your mother's request. Mom, seated silently next to me, nodded. I asked her to, she said aloud. It was the first time she had spoken in one of these meetings since the court decision. Mia looked like she had been slapped. Aaron just muttered under his breath. I expected an argument. I expected a scene. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Aaron stood up, looked right at Mom and said, So you're just handing everything over to her? After all we've done? Mom didn't flinch. All you've done? She echoed, voice trembling. You stopped visiting. You yelled when I forgot things. You spent your father's money without asking. Elena didn't do any of that. Mia stepped in defensive. This isn't about money. This is about trust. About legacy. Mom looked right at her. Legacy? You mocked your sister every time she spoke up. You let me lie to myself while she was the only one seeing clearly. You didn't want the burden. You wanted the credit. And now you don't even recognize the difference. I sat still, barely breathing. That's when Aaron laughed bitterly. This is Rich. She's always been dramatic. Now she's just dramatic with a lawyer. Mom leaned forward, tired but firm. She's not dramatic. She's devoted. And then, silence. They had no words, no more insults, no backup plan. Because when the person you ignored finally becomes the one holding your future, you don't get to play superior anymore. I walked them to the door that day, not to be cruel, but to be clear. No yelling, no last words, just a quiet closing of the chapter they never thought I'd write. It's been months since that last meeting, and while I wish I could say things are better with my siblings, the truth is, they're just quieter. There are no more texts from Mia, no more fake apologies, no more demands. Aaron occasionally sends one-line messages, usually around holidays. But he hasn't asked about Mom or Dad since that day, not once. And you know what? I've made peace with that, because the more I leaned into the silence, the more I started hearing something else. My own voice. Not the girl who used to cry in her bedroom after family dinners. Not the one who was labeled too much, too emotional, too dramatic. But the woman who stood up in court, organized medical care, protected what was left of our family's dignity, and refused to be erased. There's a different kind of strength in being underestimated. I learned that power isn't in how loudly you speak, but in how long you stand when no one stands with you. Mom's health has stabilized. Some days she forgets what month it is. Other days, she remembers Stories from her childhood I've never heard. We've grown closer in ways I didn't think were possible. She hugs me now. That wasn't always the case. Dad is declining, but peacefully. The hospice nurse said he responds to my voice the most. He still calls me kiddo sometimes when he has moments of clarity. I cling to those like pearls, rare and luminous. We walk in the garden on good days. I wheel him out and talk, even if he can't reply. I tell him about the birds, the mail, the neighbor's dog. It doesn't matter what. It just matters that I show up. Because for all their words, she's just drama. I'm the one who stayed, not for revenge, not for praise, but for love. The kind of love that cleans the pill bottles every morning. That knows the sound of your father's breathing when he naps. That keeps a list of prescriptions taped to the fridge. That sits by the door at 3 a.m. when Mom wakes up thinking her husband is still at work. I used to wonder if I'd ever be enough for my family. But now I know. I was never too much. I was never the problem. I was just the one who refused to pretend everything was fine while it crumbled. And yes, the moment their faces fell in that courtroom will stay with me forever, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because it was the first time they truly saw me, not as the black sheep, not as the burden, but as the backbone, the one they never expected, the one who didn't walk away, the one who carried what they dropped. So call me dramatic, call me emotional, call me what you want. But when the house was on fire, I didn't run. I rebuilt it.